Does anyone have anything good for the cause before we start? All right, so again, welcome. And so hopefully you had a wonderful weekend. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Day. And so I had sent out a little notice of the importance of that day and things that you could consider in doing. Sometimes, we take a day to focus on Dr. King, but realistically, every day we should be focusing on his message of really action, call to action. And so practice what I preach. And so yesterday I did attend a symposium virtual with at the Minnesota History Center. It was in the afternoon. It was focusing on Dr. King's call to action. It was a panel. There were four people from various organizations in the Twin Cities. One of them, head of the NAACP, college professor at the University of St. Thomas, a minister from a Baptist church in South Minneapolis, and then a gentleman from the Pillsbury Foundation. So all of them, the message was really good. Focused a lot on the message of call to action, and so it was again refreshing to get different perspectives, and especially on that particular day, which was set aside for Dr. King. Okay, so again, hopefully you will do something in regards to it, and maybe down the road, because one day just isn't isn't enough here. We gotta spread it out over the entirety of the year. So with that, deadline, I just want to hit home here because we are getting to the final stretch here of trimester 2.1, and deadline for any missing work is today. And so if you are going to be unable to meet that deadline, please reach out, let me know. We can come up with some plans of action here so you can have success. Again, everyone, I hope that we are going to finish this trimester in this class and other classes on a very positive note, finish strong, so you can move into the other part of your senior year in a good position that ultimately leads to you being able to graduate from Park High. All right, and this week we do have our final assessment as well, and I shouldn't use the word final because it really isn't a final. It's just an assessment related to authoritarian states, and review sheet can be found in the assessment folder in week 7. And actually I have going to have it open up tomorrow at about 1 o'clock, and it will go through Thursday. So it's timed. So again, similar to previous exam. So it's timed. So once you open it, you got 60 minutes to win it. And you're going to let me know if you have some issues or problems with while you're taking that assessment as well. So bear in mind that is what you have still left here. So we do have some unfinished business. And speaking of unfinished business, we are going to focus again on Joseph Stalin. We'll take that today and tomorrow as well. Okay. Any questions on anything that I might have said up to this point? Okay. Well, if things do pop up, be sure to unmute or put into the chat if you have any questions or concerns. Okay. So what I want to focus on today is how Joseph Stalin was dealing with opposition. And so we will have a little video clip here about opposition. And in Joseph Stalin's time as leader of the Soviet Union, when we look at grand total of perhaps victims here, we're looking at anywhere from 20 to 60 million. And that number I know is a wide range, but we're dealing with statistics and getting access to accurate statistics. It is the Soviet Union. Anytime you get to an authoritarian state, access to information is limited. When those regimes fall, archives do slowly open up. So we are learning more and more about Stalin and the Soviet era as those archives open up. And in China, they're still rather guarded and closed. But going back here, Stalin. So if we look at victims, about 20 to 60 million. And not all of them are political opponents. Some of them might become victims of the famine. And it could be because of failed policies that is creating the famine. But yes, you have the purges, and you do have the showcase trials. You do have the forced displacement that goes in there, the imprisonment in the labor camps. All that goes into 20 to 60 million. So again, when we want to compare that, if that's part of your criteria for totalitarian, you compare that with Adolf Hitler, and then we'll compare that with Mao. Joseph Stalin is perhaps one-upping Adolf Hitler here. So this video clip that we're going to watch here does zero in how he deals with who he feels are threats to the Soviet Union and to the type of Soviet Union that he wants to create. All right, so we'll spend about 10 minutes on this clip. As always, as we watch this clip, think about some of the takeaways that you might have. Individuals in here were early on supporters of creating a new state in Russia, and we'll call it the Soviet Union, but they themselves may become victims now of the Soviet state. And so that could play a part into your type of takeaway that you might have as you watch this. So let me mute it.
Stalin's morbid paranoia grew. Nobody at any level of life in the country, regardless of whether they were in the party or not, was safe. From his desk, the Great Terror was controlled and conducted. Secret police orders gave every region an arbitrary quota for the purges. Category 1 meant death. Category 2 meant the prison camps. But at times Stalin grew impatient. When he scribbled, "Give a supplementary quota of 6,000 people in the first category to Krasnodar," he was signing the death warrant for an extra 6,000 on top of the previous target. The purges struck many of the earliest enthusiasts for communism. Mikhail Minlin, in Category 2, was arrested and interrogated by the secret police in Moscow.
When
the interrogation began, I was asked to sign lies about myself and good comrades from my region. They handed me a list of 47 people. They wanted to get me to sign a statement. I wouldn't. They kept me standing for 5 days. Day and night. My legs were so swollen.
At the height of the purges, ordinary people were required to take part in mass demonstrations against enemies of the people. Yet some, who'd been most devoted to Stalin, were still blind to what was going on. Ella Shistya, the young electrical engineer, couldn't believe what her husband, a party official, told her.
Он понимал, он знал то, чего я не
He understood.
знала.
He knew what I didn't know.
Когда он мне говорил как-то за столом, он мне сказал,
When he said, "You can't imagine it, Stalin is shooting all the present members of the Politburo," and he counted them off one by one.
Зиновьев, Каменев, Бухарин, Рыков, Томский, перечислил целый ряд.
I couldn't bear it. We were having lunch. I picked up a knife and threw it at him.
Я не выдержала. У меня в руках был...
Thank goodness I missed him, but that was what was happening at the time. Stalin was shooting them all.
К счастью, я не попала.
She broke with her first husband over this slur. Later, he was purged and killed. She fell in love with and married a second man who still shared her unquestioning adoration for Stalin, but he too was purged. Then, as the wife of an enemy of the people, Ella Shistya was herself arrested and sentenced to prison in Siberia. She was sent with a party of other women crammed into goods wagons. With nothing but salt fish to eat, she developed a desperate thirst.
Вот я помню, как я слизывала, ведь мороз был сильный. Я
I remember
слизывала с
when there was a hard frost.
гайки, болты, которые
Inside the
внутри
wooden
вагона
cattle
деревянные
truck,
же, да?
I used to lick the ice off the metal screws and bolts, fearing only that my tongue would stick.
Вот так мы
That's how we traveled,
ехали.
for about a month.
Ехали мы около месяца.
Though their husbands had been killed before they left Moscow, the women were convinced they were in the railway wagon just behind them. As the train went east, they sang a song to their men, hoping they'd hear.
Это мы, ваши жены, подруги, это мы нашу песню поем. Из Москвы по сибирской дороге вместе с вами этапом идем. Прочитали в бутырках нам приговор, дали каждой жене 8 лет и, вручивши конвою пакеты, повезли нас по 100 человек. Было тяжко в холодной теплушке, ели только мы рыбный кондер. У конвоя выпрашивали свечку, не теряя былой свой задор.
Mass shipments of prisoners continued for years. They filled thousands of camps in the remotest and most inhospitable parts of the Soviet Union. Prisoners became an essential part of the workforce, slave labor for the new mines and railways, being forced through regardless.
В лагере и на БАМ-лагере я был первый.
First I worked on the BAM railway,
На Колыме, когда я был.
then in Kolyma.
Самая главная опасность не умереть
The
с
important
голоду.
thing was not to die of hunger.
Баланду тебе давали. Баланда — это суп без всякой, ну там
They
плавает,
gave
там
you balanda,
кость
a soup with just a few fish bones and some oats floating around.
И эту баланду выпивали через...
We drank from metal bowls.
Такие жестяные
They gave us a ladle of balanda
Давали черпак
and a lump of bread.
Вот так вот выпивали его. И пайку хлеба. Нас заставлял холод работать еще, потому что
We
если
could hardly work from the cold.
не работали,
If we didn't move or work, we would have frozen.
и когда человек хочет оправиться за бои, так он должен...
When someone wanted to relieve themselves, they had to take their mittens off. By the time they undid their trousers, their hands were frozen. As soon as they pulled it out, it froze. Many people had their parts amputated.
Оперированный. Никаких там уколов, никаких...
There were no injections, anything to reduce pain. They didn't even have proper
Там у них
scalpels.
даже не было операционных скальпелей. У меня, например, на лагпункте на
When I was in the
Джунгале
camp, they asked me to hold out my frostbitten foot, and with pliers, they just took chunks out. That was the treatment, the operation.
И все. Вот и все лечение, вся операция. И тот, кто первую
It
зиму,
was considered that if you survived the first winter,
тот уже
you'd get through
считался,
your
что он
sentence.
выдержит
Most
срок.
people didn't survive.
Большинство не выдерживало.
Stalin's henchmen tried to justify what was happening.
Мы можем прямо сказать, что НКВД своей разобщительной работой раскрытия шпионской организации не только спас много жизней, которым угрожала опасность от врагов, шпионов, диверсантов, разведчиков.
Applauding the message was the loyal construction worker Tatyana Fyodorova.
А то, что какие-то вот такие политические интриги, игры, которые были, есть и будут, к сожалению.
The fact is that unfortunately you always have political intrigues, machinations of this kind.
Не заслонило движение вперед никак.
It was a very hard time, but it didn't derail the movement forward in any way, because the country was growing at great speed. We're talking about a country of many millions. The whole population worked, sang songs. It doesn't mean that everything was extinguished, everything was lost.
Это не значит, что сразу все куда-то погасло и все пропало. Нет. Нет.
Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll stop it there. But I think we get a sense of how Joseph Stalin and his type of rule, how dealing with opposition and threats to creating the Soviet state. Do we have any immediate reactions or questions about what you just saw? I think back to what the one supporter of Joseph Stalin had said, in that you're always going to have political machinations or opponents out there, and it can't derail necessarily the direction. And she threw in there, they sang songs and all that. But, and I go back to when I first started this case study on Joseph Stalin. Remember, today, when we look at Russia, 75% of the people in Russia look back at the Soviet era as a good thing. And that 45% would say that the crimes that the Stalin regime had committed was unjustified. So, the vast majority, one would say, thought, hey, what I guess what was it needed to be done was okay. And yes, that's a good point that was brought up in the chat about loyal supporters. Early on, the supporters are there. And then under Stalin, they become disillusioned and they become caught up in Stalin's paranoia. And I think we have to look at early on, after the revolution, under Lenin, the shift to a new society is being created. And so you can see in the 1920s, some of those early supporters really felt life was beginning to change for the better. And you can make a really good argument that, yeah, quality of life was improving for people in the Soviet state. And then Joseph Stalin takes over, and now it seems like, you know, you're flipping a switch and things become different. I mean, architects of the Soviet Union are now becoming victims as well. Their political opponents, showcase trials, purged, exiled, like Leon Trotsky, but ultimately is assassinated, sent to the labor camp, some of these early political supporters, and then just everyday people become caught up in as well. It's unfortunate. All right, anyone else? So to kind of, you know, put a little closure to this part of it is the effective use of mass media here in showcasing who are the enemies and using mass media as well to justify. And then also kind of to go along with that cult of personality last week, really changing the narrative and building up Joseph Stalin. So naturally, when things like this go on, you know, people can rationalize it, and they can downplay it. They can say, well, yes, you know, it's unfortunate. You've got political opponents out there and people are being sent to camp. But look, I've got an education now. There's mass transit, and I have access to housing. All that stuff comes into play, and they can just look at Joseph Stalin. So again, a lot of it can come down to being rationalized that way, and again, effective use of mass media, but then also use of the secret police and the instruments of the state as well. Okay, so with that, you know, your task at hand is to look at Stalin's domestic and foreign policy, and you're breaking it down very much like you did with Adolf Hitler, and seeing how well Joseph Stalin is creating that Soviet state. Remember, he inherited, so he's not actually creating it. Lenin has done that, but he is tweaking it to be the Soviet state that he envisions. All right, so you're looking at those different areas. And in some, he might be, again, complete. In other areas, a little bit incomplete. I want to remind you that this assignment is due later today, so you want to be sure that you're working on it, and especially if you're working with historical buddies, making sure that you're sharing the information and such, so that you all can submit it in. And also remind you that today is the day to turn in late work. And then Thursday or Wednesday at 1, and you got till Thursday, 11:59 at night, to take that 60-minute short answer assessment. I'll keep this Google Meet open if you have additional questions or concerns. But if not, you are free to go and have a wonderful day.